So, Thinking in Time is not a book about the past. Thinking in Time is actually about the exact second right before you make a move. Thinking in Time asks one really cold question: which yesterday is steering your choice? In Thinking in Time, Richard E. Neustadt and Ernest R. May don't just blindly worship history, they make it answerable. Welcome to The Explainer.
You're not short on data. You were trapped in the wrong yesterday. Picture this. You're in a high-stakes meeting, right? The room is tight, money is incredibly thin, and time is even thinner. Somebody speaks up and says, "Hey, we've seen this before." And man, you can just feel the relief wash over the room. It feels like the past has just arrived, like this perfectly timed spare engine. But as Richard E. Neustadt and Ernest R. May point out, that familiar precedent, it's a spare engine that doesn't actually fit.
Because here is the reality slap. Under intense pressure, you're desperately searching your memory for a match, and you end up choosing the very first story that artificially lowers your fear. That scarcity, that pressure, it artificially lowers your anxiety. It makes fast recognition feel like mature judgment. Scarcity whispers that speed is wisdom. But, speed isn't a destination. All right, moving into Act 2, Belief Collapse. When you're sitting inside that high-stakes room, reaching for the past just feels so responsible. And that brings us to a deeply held but completely false belief. History gives me examples. I just need the right precedent before I move. I really wish this weren't true. I mean, it sounds totally valid, doesn't it? We all know context matters. But look at where it leads. If history is just a giant store of examples, then the most vivid, most theatrical story is going to win the room. And the best story is rarely the truest one. It's just the one with the strongest emotional grip. So now, suddenly, your choice isn't strategic at all. It's just theatrical. So we're faced with a losing choice, a true dilemma. Option 1, you completely ignore history and call yourself modern. Or Option 2, you obey history and call yourself prepared. Pick one in your head. Try to make the room choose. You see, they both carry equal, measured weight, but they both lose. Why? Because they are both symptoms of the exact same misunderstanding. One is just amnesia, and the other is possession. But at the end of the day, both are just letting the past run you.
Which brings us to Act 3, the anchor.
Now, this book offers a third move. Instead of asking, what is this crisis like, which, let's be honest, is just searching for a familiar story, we really need to ask, what is this crisis made of? And to understand this, we need an anchor. Think of a palimpsest map. It's like a city writing brand new streets right over old, buried ruins. Now, the ruins don't decide the route, but they absolutely distort the load. Ancient history gives us that first layer, a buried wall that bends the new road. Or think about music. That gives us a second layer, a single tense string that completely changes the chord before your ear can even name it. Both of these metaphors show the exact same state. You think you're making a choice right now, in the present, but you're actually reacting to ancient structures and unseen tensions that are totally shaping your reactions. So, how do we break that unseen tension? Well, the book gives us a really rigorous framework to use. It's called the Difference First Analogy Audit. First, you write out your current case. Then you write the old case. But here is the absolutely vital pivot. You have to list the differences first. Name the changing incentives. And finally, find the breaking fact. You see, mature judgment forces sequence. The rule here is simple but incredibly strict. First, anatomy, then analogy. Let's look at Act 4, the hidden cost. Using history as a shortcut has some massive, systemic consequences. It creates this style of leadership where you get really fast with the completely wrong map. You end up punishing careful doubt and mistaking it for decisiveness. And all of this leads to a stark, singular number: 1. Because surprisingly, one bad analogy can move way more money than one good forecast. Why is that? Well, because a bad analogy spends money. It spends status. And it spends trust by successfully cutting fear long before anybody even notices that it's completely wrong. Which brings us to a pretty heavy question. What story do you reach for when the cost feels too high? Here's your second dilemma. You can decide right now to protect your momentum, or you can pause and risk looking slow to everyone else. Honestly, both can actually be forms of cowardice. Momentum can hide fear, and delay can hide fear. The real test is a lot cleaner. If you pause, does that pause answer a sharper question? I want to provoke you a little bit here. Your favorite precedent might actually just be your favorite excuse. Think about it. Who benefits when a specific precedent becomes the entire room's language? Who looks wise and who gets silenced? just because their facts break the comfortable story. Borrowed courage is very often just borrowed blindness. It lets you feel serious and decisive while entirely skipping the hard work of the present moment. And that brings us to Act 5, the choice. Let's bring ourselves right back into that active decision room. You've got the same pressure, the same scarcity, the same clock ticking down. To resolve that scarcity hook before the next crisis even hits, the book relies on a one-page decision card. You have your similarities, what matches, and you have your differences, what breaks. The real trick here is visually prioritizing the differences. You have to put what breaks first. Now, scarcity hates that. Scarcity wants a shortcut, it wants the easy way out. But prioritizing differences, that stops the room from merely rehearsing old stories, and it actually forces true strategy. Past first, choice second. This book teaches a sort of strict mercy. Your past matters, right? Your scars matter. But absolutely none of them have the right to rule untested. Mature judgment isn't about speed. Mature judgment is about sequence under pressure. You have to govern your internal archive, not just blindly obey it. This is the decision. Write the difference list before the next hard call. Make it now, because if you don't govern your own history, whose yesterday will end up writing your tomorrow? If not now, not ever.